Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're putting on our detective hats to investigate a massive ongoing disappearance. We'll be looking at a fascinating and honestly slightly chilling forensic investigation into the modern feeling of isolation. Have you ever felt like you're constantly surrounded by people, literally always reachable, and yet somehow entirely alone? Well, this explainer frames that exact modern feeling not as some kind of personal failure, but as a genuine forensic mystery. We're going to unpack the morphology of absence together, and we'll treat the slow, quiet vanishing of human connection exactly like a crime scene that we need to carefully examine. So, have we lost human connection? Man, it's a heavy question. If you've been feeling this persistent, low hum of something missing, a sort of ambient tech fatigue, I want you to know you are absolutely not alone. This investigation actually validates that ambient grief. We're treating this missing feeling as a disappearance that happened right in plain sight. It's kind of like we renovated a house, upgraded all the lighting and the Wi-Fi, and then completely forgot to notice that the foundation had just vanished. We didn't lose human connection overnight. We lost it slowly, substituting it with things that look an awful lot like connection, but actually aren't.
Okay, let's dive into this. When we talk about connection today, we are absolutely not talking about a LinkedIn notification, a follower count, or even a quick text message. We are talking about the somatic, meaning bodily, and frankly terrifying experience of mutual vulnerability. It's that undivided presence between two human consciousnesses. It's that super rare, unrepeatable moment when you look at someone and they look back at you and you suddenly realize the space between you isn't an absence at all, but a deeply felt presence. That is the true, genuine connection we're investigating today.
And look, the loss of that connection, it's not just some abstract philosophical problem. It is quite literally a matter of life and death. Chronic social disconnection carries a 26% increased mortality risk. I mean, that number is staggering. To put that into perspective, we're talking about a public health crisis comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. We are currently living through what the U.S. Surgeon General officially calls an epidemic of loneliness. We're biologically starving for something our bodies absolutely require to survive, all while sitting at this endless, all-you-can-eat buffet of digital engagement. Because the body really does keep the score. When you're deprived of genuine social regulation, your biology just short-circuits. Your internal systems start operating as if you're under continuous physical threat. It floods your body with cortisol, spikes your inflammatory markers, accelerates cellular aging, and even disrupts your deep, restorative, slow-wave sleep. Your organism is literally scanning the horizon for danger because, from a purely evolutionary standpoint, being separated from the tribe, that's a mortal threat. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what you might be feeling right now. Think of this as our forensic checklist. Maybe you're performing connection, having a totally active social life, but feeling like absolutely none of it actually lands. Or maybe you're stuck in the substitution economy, using podcasts or algorithms to simulate the feeling of having friends in the room with you. Then there's the articulation gap, where everything looks great on paper, so you can't even find the words to name why you feel so empty. And finally, the velocity anesthetic. That's when we use constant busyness and endless productivity just to numb out the absence.
So let's look at part 1, the architecture of separation, tracing the physical vanishing of community.
Where did this crime actually take place? Well, it started right in our built environment. Over the last century or so, we basically engineered the accidental human encounter completely out of our daily lives. Think back to the 1950s, we got suburban isolation, right? Cars and private backyards physically separating us. By the year 2000, sociologists were noting we were bowling alone. Doing more activities, sure, but doing them completely apart from organized social groups. Fast forward to 2011, and smartphones meant we were alone together, physically sitting in the exact same room, but mentally wandering 1,000 miles away. And today, in 2024, we have the anxious generation, a cohort entirely raised in a screen-mediated world that completely lacks the healthy friction of embodied real-world play. Actually, to understand the deepest root of this, we have to look at philosopher Charles Taylor's concept of how our very identity changed over time. Historically, humans had what he calls a porous self. We were deeply, deeply enmeshed in our villages, our traditions, our neighbors. The boundary between our inner life and the outer world was highly permeable. But today, we operate as a buffered self. We're these post-enlightenment, highly autonomous individuals safely sealed off behind thick layers of psychological armor. But here's the catch. The exact same wall that protects you from the judgment of the mob is the wall that prevents you from feeling the touch of a neighbor.
I absolutely love this quote because it makes the loss so incredibly tangible. Just think about the death of the front porch. The porch used to be the primary interface between private life and public life. You sat out there, the neighborhood just sort of happened around you, and you participated in this low-grade, easy pleasure of shared physical space. Think of that old barber on the corner who knew everyone's history, or maybe a chaotic childhood summer party where literally nobody checked their watches. We traded all of those spontaneous third places for a fenced-in backyard and a private garage. We effectively traded cohabitation for isolation.
Moving into part 2, the digital enclosure and how it hijacked our biological need.
See, the physical environment was really just phase 1. Next, the attention economy hijacked our biological need for connection and very cleverly replaced it with a variable reward schedule. They took the greatest human need and turned it into the greatest human product. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how tech platforms often treat connection and engagement as synonyms, but they are not. Real connection requires patience, ambiguity, and holding another person's complex reality in your mind. Engagement? That's just time on site. It's clicks. It's the slot machine anticipation of your next notification. The digital scroll just produces fragmented attention and constant agitation. It reduces wondrously complex human beings into flattened content. And you cannot genuinely encounter someone's content, you can only genuinely encounter a person.
This massive shift also destroyed how we converse with one another. Linguist Deborah Tannen highlights this huge transition from rapport talk to report talk. Rapport talk is a joint project, right? It's truth-seeking, it's relationship building, and it totally tolerates being wrong because the ultimate goal is just understanding. But the internet functions entirely on report talk. It's highly performative, combat-style information transmission. It's literally the Colosseum. You don't listen to understand, you listen to perform for your tribe. And when we accidentally bring that combat frame back into our private friendships and marriages, the relationships simply collapse under the weight of it.
Which brings us to the tragedy of the unobserved life. Sociologist Irving Goffman talked about the front stage, where we perform our social roles, and the backstage, which is that private, completely unobserved space where we rest, reflect, and actually figure out who we are. Digital life has practically obliterated the backstage. Now the fitting room is completely public. Every awkward thought and phase is archived and judged by an audience. When you're constantly forced to perform your identity, your genuine interior development is arrested. We've basically become a society of sophisticated brands, desperately wanting to be loved, but with no real self left behind the face to actually receive that love.
This leads us to part 3, the commodification of care, and how we're outsourcing our messy obligations. With our physical spaces isolated and our digital spaces hyper-performative, we enter the era of commodified care. It's literally a $4.5 trillion substitution economy. We buy guided meditation apps because unguided stillness is terrifying to us now. We pay for breathwork classes because we've somehow forgotten how to just breathe and rest on our own. We pay a therapist to hold our messy emotions because if a friend comes to us with real pain, our very first instinct now is to gently refer them to a professional. So, the crucial point is this. Professional therapy is incredibly vital and totally life-saving, but the over-commercialization of care has trained us to believe that holding each other's complex pain is a job strictly reserved for professionals, which leaves our ordinary everyday friendships painfully shallow. This quote captures the irony perfectly. We will happily pay thousands of dollars for a weekend retreat just to feel a simulated sense of belonging, but that high price tag ensures we only interact with people exactly like us. True community, much like a functioning democracy or a historical village, is unchosen. It absolutely requires the incredibly uncomfortable friction of dealing with people you didn't perfectly curate, people who annoy you, people who vote differently than you do. That friction is the exact muscle required to build the social trust we are currently starving for.
Finally, Part 4, the return to presence, the active antidote for repair.
We spent a lot of time today in the forensic grief of what we've lost, but how do we build an actual, workable solution? Let's move to and see how this builds on philosopher Simone Weil's ideas. She viewed attention not just as some basic cognitive skill, but as a profound moral act. True attention is self-emptying. It's actively suspending your own needs, your own judgments, and your own burning urge to check your phone so you can fully and patiently turn your consciousness toward another human being. In an attention economy completely designed to harvest your focus for profit, choosing to give your undivided attention to the person sitting right in front of you, that is the ultimate radical act of rebellion. And that leads us to our final thought. The mystery of the vanishing connection is solved, right? We know exactly how it happened. The question now is what you are going to do with this evidence. The next time you're sitting across from someone you care about, can you seal the room? Can you put the phone away, ignore the metrics, suspend the performance, and simply, truly witness the other human being? Will you give the radical gift of your undivided, uncommodified attention? Because honestly, it's the only way we bring connection back to life. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.